Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is AES and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's video covers one of those topics that will most likely give me a lot of pushbacks. That prediction is due to the sensitivity of the conversation at hand and what I would personally consider an overrated game. In my opinion, an overrated game is one that many people praise, but I cannot understand and or agree with said praise. A great example that will not be featured on this list is Fortnite. If you have not checked out my video on Battle Royale games, make sure you do so. I will include it in the description box. In short, Fortnite has been massively hyped and rated as one of the best games ever made, but the adoration is solely for its Battle Royale mode, which is only a single mode that at launch took place in a single map. Do not get me started on Fortnite. We will get back on track. Before we begin, I want to stress a few key points. First, outside of the top 3 titles, none of the mentioned games are bad. In fact, some of them are quite good. They will be brought up because I do not think that they are as good as people make them out to be, for one reason or another. Secondly, I must have completed a game for it to be featured on this video. Thirdly, the options will be ranked from least overrated to most overrated. Lastly, and as always, the following list is entirely subjective. And if you have other picks for overrated games, let me know in the comment section. Feel free to also let me know if you disagree with any of my choices, and I would appreciate it if you do it in a civil way. It probably will not happen because the way folks on the internet converse nowadays, but hey, I can at least ask. Without further ado, let us rank my top 10 most overrated video games. Number 10. Gears of War for the Xbox 360. The first entry in one of Microsoft's flagship series, Gears of War was certainly a reason to go out and purchase an Xbox 360 back in 2006. It has fantastic visuals that still hold well to this day, as well as gratifying shooting mechanics and gruesome killing opportunities. Sadly, Marcus's and Dom's first outing suffers from a lack of characterization. Outside of Marcus cursing from time to time, what else does the game tell us about him as a character? Dom, who is a major player in Gears of War 2 and 3, is treated practically as an NPC who simply accompanies you on your journey to defeat the enemies instead of being a meaningful companion. The gameplay holds up the title to make this issue minor, but the first Gears of War game has been praised to high heavens, and yet I barely saw anyone talk about the lack of character development, which is why I decided to place it on this list. Number 9. Titanfall for the Xbox One. The first Titanfall is incredibly fun as a multiplayer game, running around, parkouring, and utilizing the Titans to pummel foot soldiers and other robotic foes is very engaging. Did you notice how I solely referenced the multiplayer component of the title? My point exactly. Many gamers and journalists alike claim that the initial outing in the series is excellent, and yet it botches a major portion of it. It is especially evident when you play the second Titanfall, which is superior to its predecessor in every conceivable way. I do not mind plugging in the original Titanfall and play it from time to time, but there is no denial from my perspective that it is certainly overrated. Number 8. Uncharted Drake's Fortune for the PlayStation 3. I introduced this series to my mom, who does not play video games. She absolutely adored the story, which says a lot about Uncharted Drake's Fortune's impactful narrative. It is nothing groundbreaking, but it introduces the characters in a very well-told manner, and it incorporates gameplay that is fun to boot. Unfortunately, there are 2 reasons as to why the franchise's first game is on this list of overrated video games. On one hand, there's a severe lack of environments. I understand that the narrative takes place in one location, but after the 10th chapter I started to grow a bit tired of seeing trees or the same old architecture. On the other hand, there is a well-known exploit with the cover system that can negate any challenge, unless you are playing on the crushing or brutal difficulty settings. The latter complaint is only nitpicking, but I noticed it much more here than the other Uncharted titles. Uncharted Drake's Fortune sets the building blocks for one of my favorite PlayStation franchises, but the first steps in Nathan Drake's adventure fall short, particularly when compared to the preceding entries in the series. Number 7. Resident Evil 4 for the GameCube. What I expect to be the most controversial pick on this list, Resident Evil 4 has been highlighted as the game that revitalized the Resident Evil franchise and one of the best horror experiences of all time. Since we are currently talking about it, you can probably guess that I disagree with that notion. Generally speaking, the game is alright. There's a decent variety of enemies and a cool set of unlockables that reward certain in-game achievements. Sadly, this is where the positives end for me. Leon Kennedy is a buff, handsome, generic good guy. The controls where you have to walk, stop, and then aim the gun is very outdated in today's standards, and the story is too goofy to the point that it makes it uninteresting. Resident Evil 5 story is also out there, cough cough, Chris punching a boulder, cough cough, but Wesker was a badass character and a couple of the twists caught me off guard. Can't say the same about Resident Evil 4, thus cementing its spot on this list. Number 6, Destiny for the PlayStation 4. Let me start off by saying the following. When Destiny came out, I played the crap out of it. I believe that I spent anywhere between 100 to 200 hours while grinding for loot. I still believe that it is overrated. It currently has a score of 76 on Metacritic, but I still think it is too high. Outside of gunplay that is nicely executed and fantastic music, everything else about the game is lacking on several fronts. The story is practically non-existent, with dialogue that is comically bad.
Who are you?
Why have you been watching us?
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
The visuals look like they could have been pulled off on Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, which could be the case because that game is available on those platforms. At launch, there was not nearly enough content to warrant a $60 price tag. $40 would have been much more appropriate. The original Destiny did improve after a few years, but I still believe it is overrated, and I think that many of you would agree with me. Number 5, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time for the PlayStation 3. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time on the PC is a wonderfully charming title. That version will not appear here. The PlayStation 3 version through the Classic Trilogy HD collection, on the other hand, is an entirely different story. I have no idea how it sits at 81% on Metacritic. When I played Sands of Time a year ago, my experience was absolutely dreadful. The music was too loud in numerous sections to the point that you could not hear the cute bantering between the prince and the princess. It simply ruins the narrative, so you may as well mute the game and listen to a podcast in the background while completing the campaign. The other issue happens in a section towards the end, where you must fight waves after waves of enemies as the platform rises. There is an intolerable difficulty spike compared to the previous and follow-up sections of the title, and you end up wrapping Sands of Time on a sour note as opposed to having a sense of accomplishment. Again, Sands of Time on the PC is understandably great, and the best in the trilogy. On the PlayStation 3, yes, it is overrated. Number 4, Assassin's Creed for the PlayStation 3. When I played the original Assassin's Creed back in 2007, I was engrossed in the experience. Going through different sections of old Middle Eastern towns was amazing, and at the time, I had a blast with the combat system. As the years have gone by, I attempted to go back and replay it. Although I completed it, my impressions of the second playthrough changed from the first playthrough. Nowadays, the combat system is laughably easy. The story, while serviceable, is not engaging for most of its runtime. The modern time sections are sleep-inducing. There's also not much incentive of gathering all the collectibles, which would be okay had the game incorporated PlayStation trophies or Xbox 360 achievements. It currently has the same score on Metacritic as Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. I cannot wholeheartedly agree with that number, therefore making the original Assassin's Creed overrated in my eyes. Number 3, Indigo Prophecy for the PlayStation 4. How in the blue heck does Indigo Prophecy on the PC have a score of 85 on Metacritic? I don't think we play the same game. The user score on the PlayStation 4 version is 75. I'm just flabbergasted. Indigo Prophecy is easily the worst game by Quantic Dream. I kid you not, my favorite part about it is the song that plays during the end credits. It is cool that you can choose which character to utilize throughout the narrative, but everything else is either mediocre or terrible. The narrative is nonsensical. The characters are unlikable. I can't name a single individual in the title, even the ones that were under my control. The QuickTime events can be somewhat tedious on the higher difficulty settings. I ran down Beyond Two Souls on the PlayStation 3 for a disorganized tale, but at least the voice acting from Elliot Page and Willem Dafoe is outstanding. I'm glad that Quantic Dream only improved their catalog after Indigo Prophecy, but its first published title is pretty bad and unquestionably overrated. Number 2, Resistance Retribution for the PlayStation Portable. Oh dear. It is sad that the only Resistance games that I played were this pick and Resistance Burning Skies on the PlayStation Vita, which was better than Retribution, but not a good game in its own right. I don't know if it's due to the lack of first-person shooters on the PlayStation Portable that this game was overrated and overhyped, but I gave it a shot last year and I was relieved the second I beat it, knowing that I would not have to play it ever again. The sound design is okay and the weapon variety is cool, but they are not enough to save Resistance Retribution from criticism here. The enemies deal way too much damage and there are several difficulty spikes that are sprinkled all over the place. Keep in mind that I played it on the default difficulty setting. In addition, the narrative is boring, the protagonist is horrendous, and the dialogue is 100% cringy. I will ultimately tackle the PlayStation 3 titles, which, from what I heard, are supposed to be better. I sure hope so, otherwise I would have to state that the entire Resistance franchise is overrated. It is too early now. At the moment, I can only aim that statement towards Resistance Retribution on the PlayStation Portable. Number 1. Crysis for the Xbox 360. In all honesty, I would have placed Fortnite at the top of the list had I not made the video about Battle Royale games. Instead, I decided that the original Crysis deserved the number 1 spot. Why? It is simple. It is a glorified technical showcase. When it originally came out for the PC, the only discussion that I heard about Crysis was whether or not someone's PC could run it. I didn't hear anything about the gameplay, sound design, characters, or narrative, all of which had problems when I ended up playing it last year. I will say this, you do feel like a badass sometimes with your powers and the lighting can be stunning at times. However, the story has numerous plot holes, there are several pop-in textures, the campaign is ridiculously short, running anywhere between 4 to 6 hours depending on what difficulty you play, and there are hilarious moments when an awesome song would play for 5 seconds and then mutes itself, leaving you wandering around the world without any music whatsoever. Indigo Prophecy and Resistance Retribution are worse titles than the first Crysis, but they were not placed on everybody's watch list for anticipated titles as much as the very first Crysis. As a result, Crysis 1 holds the crown as the most overrated game I have ever played. Well folks, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for checking it out. What is the game that you would consider to be overrated? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Till next time, have a great day or evening wherever you are. My name is AS, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.